2014, my husband and I had an opportunity to go on this ship. It's called an ocean research vessel. It is managed by the National Institute of Ocean Technology, Ministry of Earth Sciences. The ship is very beautiful. It's a scientific ship meant for deep sea mining, and it's an ice strengthened ship, which means that from the Arctic to the tropics it can travel. Most important thing for me as an IP strategist when I went on the ship is that the bridge, that's the top part from where the navigators sit, I actually saw a table full of charts, several hundred charts, not just one or two, several hundred charts. And when I asked them, charts like this one, so the image on your left is of Madras Port and the one on the right is an electronic navigation chart. So I saw these electronic navigation charts there, and I asked them what these are, because at that time I didn't know. And they told me that when the pilot comes in from the open sea into the harbor, he needs a navigation chart, and that's what these are. The interesting thing was, each chart cost rupees 3,200. And I was quite surprised because all of us buy maps, and none of them cost that much. It's an Indian map. And then I found that it was expensive because it was copyrighted by the UK Hydrographic Office. How did this happen? I thought this story was very appropriate for this conference's theme, the conference being about shifting sands. Sea travel was what the British were good at, and around 1650 they decided that they needed a naval hydrographic office to chart the entire world. And in 1685, a couple of people, one particular person called John Sellers, was given the job of charting the whole world, and he went around doing it in the Caribbean and West Indies. And he couldn't do it after a while because he was overcommitted, and he made a consortium, and one of the people in the consortium was John Thornton. In 1703, he mapped South India. So he mapped every entrance to the port of South India, 15 to 16 ports along the Coromandel coast, and that's not including those in Calcutta or in Andhra Pradesh, just around Tamil Nadu. And this was copyrighted as a crown copyright. Now, crown copyright is not like a normal copyright. It is the copyright that belongs to the government of the UK. Who gets a crown copyright? The Queen, her ministers, any educational department, no, any ministerial department, any government agency. When they make something, they get crown copyright. And crown copyright lasts for 125 years from the end of the year in which it was created, which means that if something was created in 1885, the copyright would last till 2010. However, if it was published within 75 years of it being created, then it would get a protection only of 50 years, lasting 2010. Yet again, if an additional change, a derivative, a copy, or a digital copy of it was made within that period, then copyright would extend for a further 50 years. This is how they map our country, and we still pay copyright royalty fees. Colonialism is not over, right? So, why do they have crown copyright? They have crown copyright because the status of the documents that they are using. Prevent fraud or misrepresentation. When we go to buy property, we often go to the registered office so that we know exactly what we are buying. We don't just take the word of the seller for it. So it prevents fraud. And yet another valid, completely valid reason is to increase the financial viability of the official versions. This is intellectual property, and this is how it works. We hear a lot about the romance of the inventor who made $1 billion, but then IP also is business. And that's the exact point that I'm going to talk about today, because every market is like every port. When you enter a market, you have to enter with a strategy, with a plan, and you have to have that plan to take it to your particular monetizable goals. This is yet another example, and this is from Chennai. This is a project of the Commissioner of Municipal Administration, who, we had a visionary commissioner of municipal administration a couple of years ago, take up this, who wanted to take up this plan of ending open defecation very seriously, and so he put up these. If you ever come to Chennai, you will find them in bus stands and on pavements. So one of the things they did was they charted where people piss, and they put them up there. So it's very, very useful in a very dirty city like Chennai. So, but why am I talking about this? Because when he created this, he also asked us to protect the intellectual property in this. Not just the color, not just the scheme, but the safety features, the vandal proofing features, and also the fact that it's very easy to clean because it has no corners. However, and you may know that intellectual property registration in India at least takes about between 2 and 6 years, and a conservative estimate. Sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it takes shorter. But we got the registered application last week, and when we went to him and we gave it to him, he said, what am I supposed to do with it? I am government, right? So what we have noticed in our work as IP strategists in this country is that we're very good, okay, at least reasonably good at the lab work. We're good at design. We understand design. We understand basic sciences. Some of us may not agree with that, but we are good theoreticians, yeah? And to some extent, our law is good. But what we forget is the market. And in fact, the tagline of our company, as I have also given in my profile, is at the intersection of the lab, the law, and the market. Because this is what we forget when we enter India, when we enter as a startup, when we enter as a joint venture company. We forget that the market is very important. It's not just the technology that does the job. On the other hand, we have a very poor reputation across the globe. Maybe not in the countries that we don't hear of. Africa thinks very highly of our technology, or Eastern Europe thinks highly of our technology, but not so US, not so Europe. In fact, this particular ranking came out in February 2016, and we were ranked 37. There was only one country below us, that was Venezuela. But it's not something to feel bad about, because it's a ranking that talks about the lab and the law. It does not go into the fact that we are a different type of market. We are a market who decides what we want. We're very good at taking technology. We're very good at using technology, but we may be not so good at respecting IP. But then, as we normally say, we don't follow any laws. We don't stand in a queue. Yeah? We don't follow traffic laws. So why should we follow IP law? You know? So when the UK Intellectual Property Office gave us a grant to study the different technology problems that UK SMEs have when they come to India, they asked us to come up with a toolkit to help the SMEs to come in with technology and actually make money. So this toolkit was launched in April by the British Deputy High Commissioner in Chennai, and we came out with an IP Smart approach. It is quite strange in this country that normally managers of companies leave intellectual property to the technical team or to the legal team. There could be nothing more wrong. It is necessary for the manager to be on hand, and he has to decide what type of IP company they want. So a type 1 IP company would be a startup or an individual inventor. A type 2 company would probably be a contract manufacturer or a joint venture. A type 3 company would be a company like Hyundai or Foxconn, who come in with a lot of technology but do not protect their technology in India. And type 4 is a company like P&G or Unilever, who have been here with us throughout our journey. It's not necessary that a type 1 company in India should operate as a type 1 company in some other country. Hyundai, for instance, is a type 4 company in Korea and a type 3 company in India. Let me just explain that very quickly. So this topology is based on what kind of IP they develop, and IP can be technology, which is patents. It can be copyrights like maps and charts, or films or music, which may be of interest to our previous speaker. And what do they focus on, and what kind of landscape they are operating in, and what kind of legal help they require. So a startup would probably require only
licensing procedures. So they would have to pay lawyers to create their MOUs, to create their legal work, but they will not be able to sustain a litigation in India. We have a very poor record, very expensive litigation. 10 years, 15 years is normal for an IP litigation. It's not a good idea. Yeah? But they can work if they have a clarity about where they go. A very quick example. So one of our clients who comes from a very, a good South Indian National Institute of Technology came up with a technology which is actually a titanium nitride based coating. So for those of you who might have a science background, might be useful. So they came up with the technology and they expected the technology to have use in the optics industry, not only because it's scratch proof, not only because it increases durability, but because it can give different colors in eyewear accessories. And they thought Essilor would be a good company to approach. What we discovered was filing a patent in India at this point would be totally non-productive. The reason is that India has no way to develop a technology from scratch to product. The Indian development ecosystem depends on a global technology development ecosystem which has been there for at least 50 years. So the first patent would have to be filed in Shanghai, in China, where they actually look at how the eye interacts with the lens, the actual eye tissue which interacts with the lens. And then the second patent would have to be filed in Japan, where the Nikon Zeiss JV of Essilor will improve the lenses to standardize them. The third patent would have to be filed in Europe, in France, to take that lens to product shape. From there, a fourth patent may have to be filed in the USA to make a product and package it. So, after all of this, patents would have to be filed in at least one or more mass production sites, from where it might come to Bangalore, India as a fully developed product. And finally, maybe we would have to file a patent, or we would have to file a trademark or a brand in Bangalore or in Chennai to protect what the product is. So this is the development economy of India, and a type 2 or a type 3 company would find it easier not to file patents in India. This sounds very counterintuitive. Why would an Indian patent not be filed in India? In fact, the law requires that every patent in India should be filed in India. What is important is to understand that there is no business sense of filing a primary invention as a patent or a technology in India. Let us look at a very successful type 3 model. Those of you who've been to Chennai in the last 5 years will notice that we have changed all our by 2 ways into 1 way because there is a huge metro rail project going on. There are 3 phases. The first phase is being handled by the Russian Moscow Metro Railway and the Trans-Tunneling Corporation of Russia, and another part is being handled by the SUCG, which is the Shanghai Urban Construction Group, nothing more than a JV which includes the Shanghai municipality. So this is how my city looks from the top, and this is how it looks from underground, and these pictures are not even available. So this is how it looks, and these are the technologies the Chinese are using in India. They have actually filed a patent for a tunnel borer. It's called a tunnel borer machine. So when they did this kind of work in Delhi, they were using German machines, Herentnecht and Hitachi, but they've learned. And in Chennai, they are deploying STEC 1 and STEC 2 technology, which is their own patents. And these patents have not been filed in India. They've only been filed in China. And this is a process which is being utilized increasingly by companies that are succeeding in India, which means that most of the patents that they own are filed in their own country. So you see that big red batch is the number of Chinese patents being filed by the Chinese. And towards the end, you see a little sliver of green, that is the Indian patents being filed by Indians. So we are very far behind on recognizing what technology can do for us. This is the story of Chennai's growth and the Make in India story as well. Most of the technology that's coming in is not protected in India. When Nokia went, they left behind not one Indian person who could make a cell phone. They used to turn out 16,000 phones a day. They sent out of work 3,200 workers, but not one person is left who can make a technology. The same will be the case with the metro rail or with Hyundai. Hyundai turns out one car every 72 seconds in a factory in Sriperumbudur near Chennai. It's about 2,700 cars per day. But I can tell you that when they leave, or if they ever do, there will not be a single Indian person who can make a Hyundai car. A type 4 strategy is what Unilever or P&G would follow, or Hyundai would follow in Korea. Yeah? So a type 4 technology challenge is to look at your competitors, to existing industry competitors, the buyers, the suppliers, the people who bring in fakes, the people who enter new. All of these have to be studied, and technology has to understand each of these different factors. So when you look at a company like Unilever, their existing competition would be Dabur, Himalaya, Imami, Bajaj, ITC, and they do look at that and they file patents accordingly. They file patents, they file brand names, they file technologies accordingly, and yet with 22,321 patents globally, Unilever has only about 3,000 patents in India. In essence, what we have turned out to be is a great market with no technology. So, just about in time, I want to go back to that story which we heard before. So, like the ocean, which is constantly shifting, and like the sands which are constantly shifting, the market does too. But that doesn't mean we can't have a strategy, or that doesn't mean that we should not have a strategy, or that does not mean we should not have a steady route to take. That's what the British were guided by, that's what the Dutch were guided by, and they did draw up maps to reach India. So in India, the market is very different. And as managerial students and students of management, I know that my talk has been a little over-technical perhaps, but something that I would like to share with you, that you need to participate with the technology members of your team and also the legal members of your team to create a strategy that will work in India. Because like as John Buchan says, if the strategy is not exactly right, it's going to be vastly wrong. Thank you.